Hello and welcome back to the Corruption of Colton podcast, episode 12. Today we are going to be talking about one of the most influential heavy metal albums of all time, Holy Diver by Dio. Now, obviously, Dio is one of the most important heavy metal vocalists of all time, being the frontman of Black Sabbath in the 80s and the frontman of Rainbow in the 70s. And he was the fill-in for Ozzy Osbourne after he was given the boot in 1979 from Black Sabbath and forming his own solo career. You know, Dio was the replacement for him, and a great replacement at that. Now, don't come at me, but I think that Ronnie James Dio is the better vocalist for Black Sabbath, and he has recorded better material. And I can already guess that I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning to an angry mob outside my house. But hold your pitchforks and torches, because I'm going to explain why. I just think that Ronnie James Dio has put out better albums. I'm sorry. Now, I'm not knocking Ozzy. Is Ozzy one of the best heavy metal vocalists of all time? Fuck yeah. I mean, he's the Prince of Darkness. I mean, he's recorded albums like Paranoid and Master of Reality and Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, right? But I just feel like Dio gave us Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules and the reunion album back in 92, Dehumanizer, and even the little Heaven and Hell supergroup with Tony Martin back in the 2000s. He gave us that Heaven and Hell album. The group was called Heaven and Hell, inspired by the album name for 1980. And, you know, I just feel like Ronnie James Dio's made a lot of contributions to music. Has Ozzy? Yeah, I mean, he's done Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman and Bark at the Moon in his solo career, and even some amazing Radiohead albums that charted, like No More Tears and Ordinary Man, right? But I just feel like I enjoy the Dio material more. I don't know if it's for his voice or the writing. I do think that Dio probably has the stronger voice for Black Sabbath sound. I really feel like Ozzy's Black Sabbath and Dio's are two completely different bands, kind of like how David Lee Roth's Van Halen and Sammy Hagar's Van Halen sound like two completely different bands to me. But I really could say the same for Black Sabbath, that they feel like two completely different bands, and that I just think Dio's Black Sabbath is the better band for the sound. I feel like it's just a better sound, maybe stronger songwriting. Now, there's strong songwriting in the Ozzy era. I'm just saying, I just feel like it's stronger with the Dio years. Maybe it's Dio as a confident songwriter, because Ozzy usually has a lot of co-writers where Dio kind of does a lot of it independently. Maybe that has something to do with it, but I just feel like Dio has the upper hand in the Black Sabbath camp. He also has the upper hand in Rainbow. Rainbow's had different vocalists, and Dio, again, he has the upper hand there. But this is his debut solo album, Holy Diver, one of the most important metal albums of all time as well. I actually stated this as my favorite metal album of 1983 in my Best Rock and Metal Albums episode of the podcast, and I still stand by that opinion of this being the best metal album of 83. I'm going to kind of go more into that in this episode. Obviously, I explained why, but I want to go into more detail in this episode, which is why we're doing an episode on it, so I can go into more detail. And I'm probably going to go into more detail in other episodes. I do eventually want to do an episode on the best metal albums that, you know, I also did, like my 1970 pick and my 80s picks, 90s picks, 70s picks. You know, I'm going to review those albums as well. I'm just saying we're starting with Holy Diver. I really enjoy this as a legacy album, and I'm going to explain why throughout the review. Let's begin. First things first, in the intro to this episode, I misspoke and accidentally said Tony Martin instead of Tony Iommi, so let me just clear that up. And let's get into the first track on this album is Stand Up and Shout, and the way I see it is just a rock anthem about expressing yourself, who you are, and expressing your opinions no matter who tries to stop you. Stand up and shout, let it out, you know. Let you be yourself. Let you be you. Don't let anyone stop you. If you have an opinion, positive or negative, share it. Stand up and shout, be yourself, be you know what I mean? Stand up and shout, let them out, like Dio said. And also, Dio has some incredible vocals on this song, but not just in this song. He has incredible vocals in general. I just want to bring light to that and enlighten people. If you haven't listened to Dio yet, listen to any Dio song, and you will realize that he has incredible vocals. There is not one song where he's dull, you know. There are some musicians who will just record and just go, my vocals are good enough. Next song to record. But Dio, he puts his strongest vocals into every song. I think if he thinks a song's not good enough and it doesn't have good enough of a vocal performance, he'll dump it, right? You know, Dio's one of those people who I think just realizes that he has one of the strongest voices, and he will not settle for less than amazing. Rest in peace, Dio. You know, he actually died back in 2009 or 2010, and rest in peace, Dio, right? You know, let's move on to the next song. Holy Diver, you know, that's just like the little intro to Dio's biggest hit of his solo career, Holy Diver, which happens to be the second track on this album. And Holy Diver is probably the best metal song of 1983, and definitely one of the best metal songs of all time, and one of the most influential. You know, a lot of people state Dio as an inspiration for their, you know, music career or, you know, their music ventures. You know, I mean, just like, you know, how Kiss and Black Sabbath and Van Halen, you know, they inspired a lot of 80s bands. I would say later, like 90s, 2000s bands were inspired by, you know, Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, but even like, you know, 80s Black Sabbath and Dio for sure. I think that Dio definitely is among those bands that has inspired many, especially for just how incredible his vocals are. Probably a bunch of vocalists want to be able to hit the high notes like him. He's played with some of the best guitar players, especially on this album. You know, I think that he has a very incredible band behind him on this Holy Diver album. And this is the title track, obviously one of the biggest metal songs of all time. And I definitely enjoy it. You know, I think it's a very catchy metal song. You know, I love those death metal bands that, you know, scream and just sound like, woo! And, you know, it's because I'm often frustrated, right? You know, I live with frustration and depression and anger, and I like to hear songs that I relate to. You know, I like to relate to that. I relate to that anger, and I like people that kind of can represent what I'm going through with death metal. It represents what I'm going through when I'm angry or frustrated. So I like the vocals there. But not only that, but obviously I love death metal because it's more about the instruments, which is why you can't hear what they're saying. You know, it's more about the guitars and the bass and drums and how impressive they are as instrumentalists. But what I love about more softer metal like Dio is you can understand the lyrics and relate to them, but also because you sometimes want something calming. You want to have your cake and eat it too kind of thing. You want some softer metal that you can sing along to with catchy choruses and, you know, just have fun with, but then you want that metal that can fuel your anger or frustration or like work out to in the gym. Like I listen to a lot of death metal when I'm working out. You know, I think every metal genre has a mood, right? And Dio just definitely satisfies your need for some sing-along time when you want to just rock out in your car and sing to the top of your lungs with your window down while you're driving down the highway. And Holy Diver is one of those songs. You know, you can see in your car going, Holy Diver! You know, so, you know, that's... This album, I'd say, even represents that. It's just a good sing-along album, because even the last song, you could just sing out the window, stand up and shout! Let it out! You know, you could sing that in your car, too. You know, I think that Dio, in this period, had a lot of sing-along songs, and a lot of people are going, oh, that's cheesy, it's sing-along metal, but so what if it's cheesy? There's something endearing about it. A lot of people hate cheesy pop music or soft rock bands because they call them not real rock and they're cheesy music, and so what? Don't you want a nice little cheesy song that you can just understand the lyrics and sing along to, and sometimes you can even relate to it because of how cheesy it is. It can represent what you're going through, or it can represent just anything, because since the lyrics are so cheesy and vague, it could represent almost anything and almost anybody can relate to it. And we need music like that, that someone can just chill and relate to it no matter what they're going through, right? And it's because music calms the soul. It's been scientifically proven, right? So, honestly, this is just one of those great metal songs that will stand the test of time in conclusion for many reasons, just like many other sing-along rock songs or metal songs. And also, it's got a great guitar riff, so even if it wasn't a good sing-along song, it's got that riff, right? That while Dio's just going, so perfect. Let's move on to the next track. So, funny story, this next track, Gypsy, honestly made me think of my cat. So I love animals. I have a lot of pets, and I have 2 dogs, 3 cats, and 2 rabbits, and just coincidentally, one of my cats happens to be named Gypsy. So I saw the title of the track of the song in this album. I saw the title of the 3rd track was Gypsy, and I just was like, huh. And thoughts of my cat just came to my head, right? I just thought about how my cat likes to sit on my shoulders. So one of the things that Gypsy really likes to do is I don't know if she thinks she's a bird or what, but she'll jump on my shoulders and just sit there, and she'll just let me do stuff. I can walk around or sit at my computer and edit an episode of this podcast, and she'll just be sitting on my shoulder like a bird for some reason. And I don't know. I guess it just made me think of that when I saw the title, but I thought that was just a little funny detail, but let's actually get into the track. So I believe, just from reading the lyrics and analyzing the song, that Gypsy might be a song about someone who's caught in the middle of their feelings for a girl that is mischievous and naughty, possibly, and they're just caught in the middle on what they think of this girl. And it's a fun song. It has this really funny, well, not funny, but the line is funny. It's it has a cool, fun 80s rock guitar intro, which is something Dio does a lot on these early albums. Is he's known for his backing band having these not intricate or technical, but just fun guitar riff intros, and then he just goes Gypsy into the mic. Dio just shouts Gypsy, and then you get into the song, and I think that his vocals again are done very well. He always performs well vocally. I don't know what it is about Dio, but if anyone woke up tomorrow morning with his voice, they would have an instant career. They would be a god. They would have no problems making it into the music industry if anyone was able to replicate Dio's voice. That's just how good it is. I wish I could sing like that, to be honest. I want to be the vocalist for a metal band one day, and if I had talent like that, oh, damn, I would have an instant hit, probably. I think that my vocals are good, and I'm told that a lot by, music critics. I am told that I do pretty nice vocals, but they will never be on the level of Dio. I can tell you that right now. Anyways, let's move on to the next track. So, interestingly, this next song, Caught in the Middle, is actually about the album's producer, some guy named Angelo, who produced the Holy Diver album. And Ronnie James Dio recalled that the song was written when Angelo would always go to Ronnie James Dio and say, "Ron, I'm caught in the middle again." He would, and Ronnie James Dio recalled that this guy would always make wacky decisions that would get him in turmoil, right? So that's what the song was about, him always being caught in the middle, which makes the song title make sense too. And I just think it's interesting that it's not just about an ordinary person being caught in the middle of 2 decisions. It's literally about the album's producer, which I think is really interesting. Also, interestingly, this is when Ronnie James Dio opens up about the fact that this album was kind of made on the fly, which maybe that's why it's made so good, because some of the best art and some of the best works are made just on the fly, and apparently Ronnie James Dio and his people weren't really experienced with, making an album, I guess, so they were making it up as they went, and so what they did is they even had the drummer's drums placed like near or like against a window to get that drum sound. So they were just trying different things, and that, I think, is what made this album such a work of art, that there was no plan, there was no real plan, and there was no real idea. They were just kind of going along with it. I mean, I guess there was an idea. The idea was to make an album, but, there wasn't a set plan or a way to do it. They were just trying different things, and they got this, and I think that's amazing. Also, this song has one of the catchiest guitar riffs on the album. I swear it will get in your head when you listen to it. It is an earworm, to say the least. And again, just this album so far is just turning out to be a creative work of art just because it was made on the fly. Let's move on to the next track. So this next song is just fun. And I like that, It's kind of like Holy Diver in the realm that it's just a song that's fun. You don't really have to look into the meaning too much. It's just a fun song that you can play in your car with the windows rolled down and sing along to and jam out to it. It has like a slow opening and and then it builds up into something heavier. It's just a jam. Dio is singing about don't talk to strangers because they'll bring you harm. Don't smell the flowers because they're like drugs that'll drive you crazy. And don't dream about women because they'll only bring you down or make you go wild. And then he starts singing about how he is the stranger and how some of the evil strangers, and it's just a little fun song. There's not really anything too serious about it. You need to know. So good on Dio for doing a song that is just fun. Don't have to worry too much about the meaning, and you can just jam out to it. I love those songs. I mean, obviously I love serious songs. I've expressed that on the show before. But I also like songs that you don't have to read into the meaning too much. I like both. I think it balances out the music industry for us to have songs that you need to seriously pay attention to and songs you don't, because it makes music interesting, because it means that you never know what you're going to expect listening to a song, if it's going to be serious or not, until you hit play. And it just makes a great variety of choice, which is why it makes such diverse music fans and makes diverse people. Some people enjoy serious songs, some people don't. Some people, like me, just enjoy everything. So it makes diverse opinions, and diverse opinions in this world is great. So let's move on to the next track. Track 6, Straight Through the Heart, is weird because not only is it similar in vibe, but also very similar in instrumentation. So it opens up and you think it's going to be different. It's got this fast, epic drum intro, but then the drums and guitars start copying Holy Diver a few songs ago. It sounds like Holy Diver just a few songs before. It's weird. The lyrics are different, but it just has a very similar vibe to Holy Diver, so I just don't know how to feel about it. On one hand, part of me thinks it's just copying a song from earlier. There's not much difference to offer here except for different lyrics, and it doesn't really distinguish itself from Holy Diver. It makes the songs blend together. But at the same time, I could say, well, maybe they were just going for an idea. They just wanted to do something like Holy Diver because they thought Holy Diver was good. Personally, for me, I'm going to say that it's a little bit of both. I think that it does take inspiration from Holy Diver a little too much, because I can tell they were just taking inspiration from a song earlier on the album because they didn't have many ideas to go with. Like Ronnie James Dio mentioned earlier, that they kind of were just making this album on the fly, so maybe they just needed something to work with on this song. But at the same time, I'm just I don't know, it's too similar, but I do enjoy it though. I enjoy the lyrics side. So I'll give it a semi-pass. I'll just say I'm split on it. The instrumentation, I'm not really okay with it taking too much inspiration from Holy Diver. Again, taking inspiration from an artist taking inspiration from one of their previous songs is fine as long as they don't use too much of the previous song. And I feel like here they just use too much of it. But at the same time, I will say the lyrics are very fun to sing along to, and they're very interesting. Dio's voice is front and center again here. So I'd say this is a song I just come back to, I'd say I come back to this one, but not as often because I don't want the two songs to blend together. So this next track, Invisible, is about going deep in yourself to deal with trauma, which I think is a very brave topic to talk about in this time period, because this album came out in 1983, and trauma was much more underlooked in the 80s. You know, it didn't really become a serious thing till later on in like the 2000s, 2010s, where people started taking mental health more seriously. So I will say this was a brave move on Dio's part, but a good one nonetheless. I think that it's a great song. The lyrics are very good, or they do a good job at describing trauma. He kind of makes like two characters in the song. It's definitely telling a great story. I love the story being told. I'm once again getting Holy Diver vibes in the instrumentation, though. I'm guessing they just didn't have many ideas for instrumentation yet, since it was the first Dio record, so I'll give it a pass. The last song kind of did it too, but I'm kind of starting to think that maybe they're going for an AC/DC vibe here, because like AC/DC will use similar drums and guitar riffs to other songs. Is that what they're going for, or they just didn't have many ideas? I'll give it a pass. It didn't do it as strongly as the last song. I will say the last track used a lot more similar instrumentation. Here it's more of just like, it's the same, the guitar and the drums, but I feel like they try to make the drums a little different, I will say, but still very similar. But I'll give it a pass here, but I'm still rolling my eyes at the fact that they're making similar instrumentation. I can't underlook it, though. I can't completely ignore it, but it's still one of the best metal albums of all time. Don't get me wrong. I remember I mentioned that this is one of the best metal albums of all time, and it is, because of its lyrical content. And also this song does have a crying guitar riff at the beginning, which I love it when bands do that. So I will definitely applaud the song for that. It's a very good move in metal, in my opinion. So this song's a little better than the last. So far, I'd say the only one song that I really don't like too much is the last one, and I roll my eyes at this one a little bit, like I said, but it's good. And this album is good still. I know I haven't been saying the best things about the last two tracks, and I haven't been heavily praising them, but I am praising them at the same time. But don't get me wrong, this is still my favorite Dio album and one of the best metal albums ever made. Just because an album, you know, does some unimpressive things, like even if an album does one unimpressive thing, that doesn't mean I don't think it's one of the best albums. I mean, some albums do some pretty unimpressive things and are still known as some of the best, you know what I mean? This is a great song and a great metaphor for depression. It's Rainbow in the Dark, which is another one of Dio's biggest hits and was a big hit from this album. So what I mean by this being a metaphor for depression is Dio has recited that this song is about his time in Black Sabbath and like his time leaving Black Sabbath. So basically Dio felt rejected when he left Black Sabbath, and he wasn't sure where his music career would go. You know, he felt quite rejected. He felt like a rainbow in the dark, in other words. And that might be why this album is so good, is maybe it was sparking with creativity, you know. Dio wasn't sure what he was going to do, so he was just trying different creative ideas, and it in the end, it was a hit, you know. I think that he must have been very, very happy when this came out. And I think that makes this album feel more personal, because like Dio's really sharing like how he was feeling at that moment recording it. And I'm pretty sure his mood changed, you know, when this album ended up being a big hit for him. You know, he ended up seeing extreme success, and I'm pretty sure he was grateful for that success. I know if I was feeling that way, I would be very grateful for my sudden success, and I just like songs about depression because I have depression and anxiety myself, and it just relieves my stress to know that, I'm not the only one feeling this way. So I enjoyed this song. This is probably, to me, one of the best Dio songs and one of the best songs off this album, if not the best song off this album, which I'll get to what the best one is when I get to my overall thoughts of the album. But this is an amazing song, without a doubt. And the instrumentation's a little different. Yay! Finally! But anyway, this was a great song. The final track on this album, Shame on the Night, is one of the best album closers I've ever seen. And everybody is just front and center here. All the instruments, vocals, everything shines here. And that's how you do an album closer well. When your album closer just shines bright like this, it makes it worth it to get to the end of the album. After listening to all the songs, you get to something amazing like this to end it all. I mean, they do say save best for last, right? So Dio's vocals are probably at their best here. I'd say this is the best vocal performance on the entire album. The bass is pretty prominent here and hits pretty hard, and there's bass on this album, but it blends into the mix for most of the time, except for songs like Holy Diver and stuff like that. But here, you can really just hear the bass go boom, dong, between vocals. Here it's very prominent. The guitars are very prominent here, doing one of the best riffs. Everything here just stands out. The drums hit pretty hard. Everything here just stands out, because even the drums go like bong along with the bass. Everything here sounds so bright and prominent here. So I love this track. So let's get into my overall thoughts about the album now. So I said in my best rock and metal albums of all time episode, and at the beginning of this episode, that this is known as one of the best rock and metal albums of all time, and I still stand by that opinion after re-listening to this and reviewing this, okay? I still stand by that. Some of the best tracks on here are Stand Up and Shout, Holy Diver, Rainbow in the Dark, Shame on the Night, Invisible, all amazing songs that deal with very important topics that should be discussed on a metal album, and they were quite shocking for the 80s. The 80s didn't really care about depression and trauma and other stuff like that, so this was a great album ahead of its time, in my opinion. Amazing work, Dio. It's especially shocking that, they were able to make something this great on the fly, but yet again, like I said, some of the best work is made on the fly with no plan, Sometimes it's good to not have a plan. Sometimes improv makes some of the best works, and Dio has proven that improv can make a great fucking album, just like how improv can make some of the best acting happen. So, great. Dio has proven the point that improv can be great for the entertainment industry. Good job, Dio. Also, rest in peace to Dio. He did pass away in 2010, but his musical legacy does live on, and this is proof of that, along with all of his other projects, his Dio studio albums, his work in Rainbow and Black Sabbath. So he has definitely proven that he has left a musical legacy untouched, and he has made some of the best work of all time, and this is along with the Black Sabbath Heaven and Hell album, this is one of his best works, without a doubt, alright? I love this album. And yeah, it did reuse some instrumentation elements throughout, but like I said, not all of the best rock and metal albums, don't have flaws. You would think, the best rock and metal albums like Kill 'Em All and, Rain in Blood by Slayer and, some of those high-regarded metal albums don't have flaws. They do have a few. And they don't have, just because they're some of the best doesn't mean they have to be perfect, you know what I mean? So, yes, this is one of the best albums in metal, but it doesn't mean it doesn't have flaws. The flaw being that it does sometimes copy instrumentation ideas. But again, just because a metal album is known as one of the best does not mean it doesn't have flaws. This one steals, copies instrumentation ideas from other songs in the album. Kill 'Em All, I regard it as one of the best metal albums of all time, and starting Metallica's career, has some flaws too. One of its flaws being the production. Kill 'Em All doesn't have the best production value, to be honest. It's very raw and crunchy at times, and sometimes too loud, so not every album that's known as one of the best is flawless. The only metal album I can think of being flawless is maybe Megadeth's Rust in Peace, right? But maybe that album, when I re-review it, maybe when I re-listen to it, I might even find a flaw with that, and that's my favorite metal album of all time. So even my best metal album of all time could have a flaw, but I'm still willing to consider it my favorite metal album because it's music. Music can have flaws, just like how movies can have flaws. Anything in entertainment can have a designer flaw or sound flaw, right? So thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Corruption of Colton podcast. Holy Diver is still the best metal album of 1983. Fight me on it. And I'll see you guys all on episode 13. I'm Colton, and this has been the Corruption of Colton podcast, episode 12.